Okay. So, thank you everybody for joining us today. I know that time is valuable, and a lot of you are giving up lunchtime to do this. Really thankful that you all are joining in. My name is Darin McCue. I am with DTC, or formerly known as Dental Technology Center. We are a full-service dental IT company servicing the Mid-Atlantic region, and are excited to be able to help out our client base, which is primarily dentists. We are passionate about servicing the dental community, and have brought in another partner here who is also very familiar with the needs of the dental societies out there and the dental practices out there, and that's Tim Girard from RK Tongue. So he's going to go ahead and give us some knowledge on the insurance side. Being in the dental community, both Tim and I, our two companies, certainly see the hot spots, the hot topics, the pain points of dental practices. And we have been able to really identify where some of our clients would like some help, and maybe just some guidance as far as, how to handle some of these, hot button issues that keep coming about. So we are going to take a monthly webinar series. This is our first one we're excited to do, and bring different topics to you that we find to be of concern for the dental practice and the dental community. Today's is a very exciting topic, air quoting that. It's on HIPAA. And while it's not the most exciting or joy-filled topic, it is certainly an incredibly important topic. The webinar that we're going to be doing today, and the content, is a seminar that we've been giving to the region for about 10 or 15 times a year, and it's usually about a 2-hour seminar. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to condense it down and get you the real bullet point items on what every practice needs to know, and what you can do starting today to help work towards HIPAA compliance. The format of the webinar is going to be a PowerPoint presentation. We'll have Q&A. You'll actually have a little button on the side there that you can enter in a question, raise your hand and enter in a question, and we'll see that come up on our side. We'll address them as they come in if we can, and if not, we'll go ahead and then make sure we get you the answers thereafter. So at this point, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. And again, let us know if you have any questions along the way, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end as well. So let's dive right on in. So when we're looking at HIPAA, we certainly want to go ahead and take an overview of what is out there, what HIPAA really is. It is a huge topic, huge piece of legislation, and we want to make sure that our practices got a really good understanding of what it is. No one needs to be a HIPAA expert, but you do need to know how the law applies to the practice. And we're going to look at where you start, and that's with a risk assessment. So really step one, most people, when we talk about risk assessments, have never even heard of one, and if they have, most practices have not actually completed this item. We're going to talk about 5 actions to prevent penalties. So you're going to hear the phrase over and over again called reasonable and appropriate level of coverage. A reasonable and appropriate level of coverage is basically what a practice needs to do in order to try to protect the patient health information or protected health information from getting into the wrong hands, without causing the practice, sort of undue stress and interrupting patient flow. Tim, again, is going to talk to you about cyber liability insurance, and then we're going to talk about just one simple step that you can do, which is essentially training your team. So some simple items that you can bring to your staff and show them what to do in order to make sure that they're protecting health information. All right? So some of you know me. I used to be a 3rd grade teacher, and I always started my classes with trying to find out what the students knew. And when we do the seminar in person, this is usually a good 10-minute section where we write down all the different things we know about HIPAA, but being in a virtual environment, we're certainly not going to do that. But when we ask this question, some of the responses that we get are, HIPAA is what piece of government law that I have to make sure that I put in place. It's something that making sure that I'm doing security for patient records. It involves email encryption and passwords and things, but the knowledge basis is really pretty general. So what we want to do is really dive into that a little bit more. And when we do, we're going to talk about, when you look at HIPAA, you're going to hear about the CIA. And this is really the point of HIPAA. It's the confidentiality of the patient data, the integrity of the patient data, and the accessibility of the patient data. That's really the whole reason why we have HIPAA, and the final ruling is to make sure that the CIA is protected. Okay, just like if we go to a general practice, we go to our doctors, we want to know that the information that we're giving the practice and their team is not getting into the wrong hands. How does this all start? Well, it all starts with a risk assessment. Okay? If we were to sort of pull back from a 30,000-foot view and look at HIPAA, the structure looks like this. So HIPAA is your piece of legislation. The final ruling came out in 2013, and it breaks it into 3 different categories: administrative, physical, and technical. And that is, all of these deal with how you are protecting information, how you record it, how you store it, and how you transfer it. So this is a part of the seminar that we would get really deep into, but for today's purposes, what I want you to be aware of is that HIPAA is not just technical. It's not just your IT. It's also the culture of your team. It's the physical layout and the physical securities in your practice. So it's really quite a bit of items. Okay. So then when we go ahead and look at, okay, what's the first step? Well, the first step to HIPAA compliance is really doing the risk assessment. Now, sort of a point here. You will never be HIPAA compliant. A practice or covered entity, as you're referred to by the Health and Human Services Department, will never be HIPAA compliant. It's a farce. It's this, again, it's a piece of legislation that's constantly evolving. What a practice or covered entity needs to do is making sure that they're working towards reasonable and appropriate level of coverage. Okay, and that starts with this item, which is the risk analysis or the risk assessment. You'll hear that term interchangeably. All right, so what is the risk analysis or risk assessment? It's basically an audit of how you are recording, storing, and transferring protected health information, whether it's on a patient chart, whether it's in a computer file, whether it's via email. It's going to look at all of those factors. A real in-depth look. It's going to identify all the vulnerabilities in your network with your team, with your physical structure that could let out patient health information or protected health information. And it's a documented report. You must have this, going through the risk assessment is one thing, but you need to have the proof that you've done this by having this documented report. And it's something that has to happen annually, or as a major change in the practice takes place. If the practice decides that you want digital, and then you want to go ahead and add, a CBCT machine, you're going to need to go ahead and do another risk assessment to make sure that the PHI is being protected. All right, this is step number 1. So this is the part of the seminar I usually stop and I say, okay, how many people have done this? How many practices have done this? And in the 10 or 15 we do every year, this is always a very, very small few, very, very small number of practices that have actually done this document and can put their hands on the document. And when you look at what the #1 area of audit failure is, it's the risk assessment. So it's not actually performing one and then using that information to go ahead and add more protection. So I'm going to pause here for a second. A risk assessment, like we said, is step number one. But I wanted to point out that a risk assessment is only part of the process. The next part is making sure that you take care of all the vulnerabilities that the risk assessment finds. Okay, something very, very important. To give you an idea sort of how HIPAA is playing into practices right now, since 2003 up to 2015, there have been over 33,000, almost 34,000 instances that had to have been investigated. So this is something where a practice would say, well, how would I ever get investigated and an audit performed? Well, if a patient were to come in and see, their patient record just lying open in a general area, or if they see patient on the patient viewing screen in the operatories, the patient schedule with first name, last name, it basically just takes about 7 clicks on the HHS website to go ahead and actually file a report. And once a report is filed, it automatically generates an audit of that practice. So that's one way that this can come into play. So you can see that there have already been quite a few complaints investigated, and that number is only going to increase. So the risk assessment process. Again, it's a 30,000-foot overview, and it starts with an on-site survey. Basically, whoever you hire for this task, they're going to come in and they're going to look at everything in the practice, the physical side, the administrative side, the technical side. All of those items that you see listed there are going to be identified as items that they need to audit. And then they're going to step 3 is going to take all that information and they're going to then create a report. They're going to identify where every PHI record is stored on the computers and who has access to it and all those items. So it's a full, all-encompassing audit of the practice. The result of that process is you get a HIPAA risk analysis. All right, this is the document that if the OCR were to ever knock on your door, they're going to ask you for. This is what you're going to give them. And again, it identifies the vulnerabilities, but you also have to do remediation. It's not just doing the risk assessment. You will also need to do remediation. So that's the big portion. That's step number 1. So what are some other steps that you need to take? The 5 action items that you can put back in your practice today. 1, like we said, perform the risk assessment. 2, make sure that you or in the practice have usernames and passwords to get into the network and into the practice management software. All right, so if you have a system where you don't have passwords or usernames, that's an issue. Make sure that you have a paid firewall device and paid antivirus. A firewall device is basically a box that's in your networking closet that is a protection against anybody that wants to come into your network who doesn't have authentication. If you have internet service, you have a modem or a router. That Verizon or Comcast modem comes with a firewall, but it is not HIPAA compliant. You need a paid business grade firewall device. And the same with antivirus. If you downloaded free antivirus or you only have antivirus on like the server or some other things, you're not working towards HIPAA compliance. You need business associate agreements, and these are documents that basically state that you as a covered entity, the practice, the dental practice, have an agreement from companies like ours, your IT company or your software company or whomever it may be that can have access to your data. But the business associate agreement states that that entity, that business associate, will not use the data, that PHI, for malicious intent, and that they'll protect that PHI. Wide range of types of services need to have business associate agreements. One quick note: if you have an IT company, or you have a software company, or you have a whatever, accountant or a lender who has access to your data, and they won't sign a business associate agreement, then it is the duty of the practice to say, I don't really think I should be doing business with you. So business associate agreement is very important. Keep them printed out. Keep them in your HIPAA binder. And then you also need to have encrypted local and off-site backup solution. This goes back to the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. This deals with the accessibility of the data. If something were to happen to your server or to your practice or whatever it may be, you as a practice, as a covered entity, need to show that you have protected health information covered and that they can have it accessible. So what happens if they get your data? Well, that's certainly a scary phrase. 2014 was the year that the data breaches really hit the retail market with Home Depots and a lot of the other stores. 2015 was the year of the medical breach. More than 35% of the data breaches that occurred in 2015 were medical related, and not just big medical facilities, small medical, small business, small single practice medical facilities. If you had that situation, then it can happen whether they steal your server or you lose a hard drive or an external hard drive that you're taking off site, you lose a laptop. There is a certain protocol that you need to happen. So that is something that you want to be aware of. And here's what you need to do. You need to let every patient in your practice know that you've had a data breach. It's embarrassing, but you need to let every patient know. You need to then provide notice to the media if you've had more than 500 patient files involved. You need to make sure that the media knows so that they can alert everybody. You need to provide notice to the secretary at the HHS so that they can make it known, and they actually will put you on what's called the wall of shame, which is not where you want to be. And then you also need to provide notice to your business associate. Okay, so if you do have a data breach, these are the general steps you need to fall into, because then you start to get into penalties, right? We talked at the beginning about reasonable and appropriate level of coverage. You want to look to make sure that you're doing everything you can within reason to protect data. If you still have a data breach, which certainly can happen, then they're going to look and see, okay, where do you fall on the 4-tier system as far as enforcement and as far as civil penalties. Tier 1 is a $100 to $500 fine. That is per patient record, okay? And you sort of do the math of number of patients in your practice. If you have a situation, you multiply it out, and even my 3rd grade math students, you come up with a big number here. So this can get to be a very expensive process very, very quickly. As you look at Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4, hopefully that never occurs, because that's when you start to get into a situation where it gets from bad to worse, where the practice has now really not even tried to protect the information, and Tier 4 is where you're basically, committing fraud. So don't do that. When you get into this high level of cost of civil penalties you need to pay, then you need to start thinking about how is my practice going to be able to handle all this. Well, that's where Tim comes in, and he'll be able to talk to us about cyber liability insurance and where that can go. So I'll let Tim take over here for a minute, and I'll sort of sit back and listen.
Good morning, folks. I'm certainly glad to be here and happy to have you join Darin and I this afternoon. And I'll take a few minutes. Similar to Darin, I'm going to give you the 30,000-foot view regarding cyber liability insurance and the importance of that product. So it's a relatively new product on the marketplace within the last couple of years, and it's also evolving as HIPAA in the world of cyber liability changes. So, I just want to take a few minutes and really just talk to you about what it is. So what is cyber liability insurance? It provides that protection and coverage in the event of a data breach or integrity. Darin mentioned a little earlier, he mentioned that CIA where he talked about the confidentiality, the integrity, and the accessibility. So this really, again, deals with that the accessibility of your information. If a bad guy or gal gets into your network or there's a data breach, via the previous slide that Darin went over, it can get expensive very, very quickly, just on the basis of just the pure notification. If you guys look back in your practice, your active patient load, and start doing that math. It can add up pretty quickly. So again, it provides protection in the event of this breach of data. It will cover the cost to comply with privacy breach notification laws, and that's that notification that Darin just mentioned. If there's any regulatory proceedings in the event that the feds or the gov try to come down with any fines and or penalties, this type of policy will protect you. It will also provide coverage for any liability in the event if there's an actual lawsuit, say from a particular patient that you may have for that breach. Provides a defense and regulatory defense and penalties, privacy breach response services, and it also credit reporting and monitoring is really, really, really important. Darin, if you don't mind changing slides for me. So Darin touched on this a little bit, but here are a few of these cyber liability examples. We have your viruses, malicious code, denial of service attack, accidental release of information. If you send an email with protected health information to maybe a referring doctor that has protected health information and that is not encrypted and a bad guy or bad gal gets it, that could be a breach. An unhappy or a rogue employee. I always joke with the laptop computer breach. If you are sitting at a Starbucks or a cafe having a cup of coffee and you decide to go up and use the restroom and you come back and your laptop is gone, that is a data breach. And then what we see typically, we see a ton of phishing and social engineering emails. I'm sure we all get that, and our spam filters are hopefully eliminating some of that sort of stuff. Next slide there, please. Darin, can you change slides for me? There we go. Thank you. So here we go. This is a so again, I just wanted to, so when you're out there looking for cyber liability, and it's really important. Darin said something a few minutes ago. No matter what you do or what we do, none of us are ever going to be 100% HIPAA compliant. We can have the best IT folks in the world, and I think Darin and his team are certainly one of them. But if somebody wants to get into your network, they are going to get into your network. And it's just not the big businesses that you see. The small businesses are beginning to get attacked more and more because they don't have the protections that some of the larger companies have. So it's really important, at least from my opinion, that this risk is transferred. So when you look at a cyber liability policy, these are just some of the things that you should consider having in your policy. That liability piece, the privacy liability, the regulatory proceedings, privacy expense, and the network extortion. That's the ransomware. And again, this is just a 30,000-foot view here. If there's any particular questions, my contact information is at the end of the presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or point you guys in the right direction. But one of the questions that I get the most is, oh my goodness, it's another insurance product that I should consider. How much does this one cost, Tim? The good news is it's not a relatively expensive product in the sense that typically for the small practitioners, your solo practitioners, you're looking at right around $500 for an annual premium for a pretty good policy. And depending on the scope of the practice, obviously that can change. So that's our 30,000-foot view on cyber liability insurance. So again, if there's any questions or that sort of thing, I'd be more than happy to address them. Thank you for having me, Darin.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining in. Again, it's what's troubling here with the hard part is, and every time I give this seminar, I sort of joke with them at the beginning because it's usually at a dinner, and I just preface the seminar by saying, look, this is not a fun topic. This is not a joyful topic. And if you want to throw tomatoes, I totally get it because, again, it's another, sore spot that a practice has to worry about and has to deal with. Our view is we want to make sure that the practice is doing everything it can to make sure that it's protecting itself and its patients. So, since I've been doing this for 11 years now with dental IT, and I've gone to all different types of seminars and things like that. And I heard this referred to, the HIPAA stuff referred to in two ways. I had one speaker really sort of read the, get everybody full of fear of what can happen and all of that. And yeah, you know, that's certainly one way to go. But the other way was that when practice is looking at HIPAA and trying to comply with HIPAA and putting all of these safeguards and measures into place, doing it in a manner, doing it with a thought process that, you know what, I want to do this for my patients. I'm not doing this because I'm told to do this, like, I have my kids and you need to clean your room because it's what dad's telling you to do, what mom's telling you to do, but because you want to have the facility, you want to have the team, you want to have the care for your patient so that they know you're doing everything you can to not only treat them with their dental needs, but also taking care of all of their information, and you're doing it out of a response of making sure you're looking out for them. So again, I know this is sort of a heavy subject, so I would encourage all of our practices to go ahead and try to think about putting HIPAA into place with that frame of mind, that it's really about patient care. It is a good way to go about it. We talked about one of the other things that you can do, which is training. So whenever you do training, which is something that every practice needs to do to help create a culture of compliance, you can train on any of the topics that are listed here or anything related to making sure you're taking care of information. A quick story as we have a few minutes left here. I went into a practice and I was there for a conversation with a doctor about helping the practice work towards HIPAA compliance. And as I'm sitting there, I had the front desk individual leaned over to one of the other patients and said, "Excuse me, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Jones, is your address still?" And then she said the address. "Is your birth date?" And then she said the birth date. And then she said, which I could not believe, "Is your social security number ba-boom, 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 ba-boom?" And so the patient started to get a little concerned and walked up there and had a little conversation with the front desk attendee, I would imagine, saying, "Please don't yell out my social security number." So when I went back and talked to the doctor, and the doctor said, "So, you know, what's one of the first things that we can do with HIPAA compliance?" I said, "The first thing is train your team." So you want to teach them, you know, how to make sure that they're talking to patients, where they're talking to patients, making sure they're not putting Post-it notes on monitors with passwords, which is so common. Show them how to go ahead and use the patient viewing monitors in the operatories to only show the patient information that's related to the patient in the chair. So all of these different things can be put in place. Let us know if you need any help on training. Again, this is something that we do. We're passionate about helping out the dental community. So when you do training, one key point, make sure you type up a document, you put the date on there, you put the topic on there, you put the agenda on there, and you have everybody who attends sign the document, and you take that and you put it in your HIPAA folder. All right, that should all be done by your HIPAA security officer or privacy officer. Lastly, you know, I love homework. So here's what I would encourage every practice to go do. Go back and check to make sure you have paid antivirus. Make sure you have a paid firewall. Excuse me there. Make sure you have a paid firewall. Make sure that you are have your network credentials and server passwords and usernames and passwords in place. Make sure you have your business associate agreements all together. If you need help with that, that is what we do. Call us, let us know. If you're not a DTC client and you're just joining us today, certainly reach out to me. My contact information will be at the end. This is what we do on a day-to-day basis. And then lastly, perform that risk analysis. If you haven't done it, if you don't know where to go do it, contact us. This is a service that we are getting ready. We're just getting ready to launch to our clients and to the dental community. So let us know where we can be a help there. Again, we want to make sure that you guys are working towards HIPAA compliance and taking care of that protected health information. Some of the resources that we use today are listed there. and then our contact information. Um, Again, you'll have all my information. You have Tim's info. Please let us know if we can help with anything. We thank you so much for joining. Our next webinar next month is going to be on building out a practice. So we'll have Arminco, a general contractor out of Northern Virginia who does a ton of dental offices there, certainly the ones that are out there most often. And Bank of America talking to us about the financing side of it. So thank you again very much. If you have any information or any questions or you need us, you'll have our information. Let us know, and we thank you and hope everyone enjoys the day. And again, thank you for giving up your lunch. Take care, everyone.